Hitting somebody, even making them afraid of you, doesn't make you right. Just makes you a bully. Yeah.
So hey, you are a chatterbox.
Tell me about it.
This white with this other detergent, but tie it with...
What surprised me most about the program was how easy it was to apply.
My response to the program was very positive. It worked like magic.
1, 2, 3, magic. Training your preschoolers and preteens to do what you want. Created and presented by Thomas W. Phelan, Ph.D. Well over 10,000 parents have benefited from Dr. Phelan's 1, 2, 3 Magic workshops, books, and tapes since the program was developed in 1984. Throughout this tape, you'll meet some of them as they describe their own personal experiences with this simple yet highly effective program. Now, here to present 1, 2, 3 Magic is Dr. Phelan.
Well, thank you very much. We all know that kids can be a lot of fun and they can be a pain in the neck. What we're going to talk about today is when they're a pain in the neck. Just about everything I'm going to describe to you today, I have used with my two children. Now, unfortunately, they both ran away from home about 6 years ago, so I understand. But as far as I know, they're doing fine.
Hey, you got it. Congratulations.
Give me that.
I'll give you some ideas for disciplining and training your 2 to 12-year-olds. And you can use these methods for kids that are special kids or average kids. We've used it for ADD kids, attention deficit, hyperactive kids, learning disabled children. We've even used it with the visually impaired and the hearing impaired. If you like what I'm going to tell you, you can get started in 2 hours. If you're at home watching this video in the evening and 2 hours have passed, your kids ought to be in bed. So here's how it's going to go, first of all, with the parent using the little adult assumption, assuming that words and reasons are going to persuade this child to do something different.
Mom, can I have a Twinkie?
No, dear.
Why not?
Because we're going to eat in 15 minutes.
Oh, come on. I really want one.
I just told you you can't have one.
I never get anything.
You never get anything? Do you have clothes on? Is there a roof over your head? Am I not going to feed you in 2 seconds?
You just gave Scott one half an hour ago.
Are you your brother? Besides, Scott always finishes his dinner.
I promise I'll eat my dinner.
Don't give me this promise garbage, Heather. Remember yesterday, 4:30? You ate half a sandwich and you didn't even touch your dinner.
All right, then I won't eat any dinner.
Don't threaten me, young lady, and you'll eat what I tell you to eat.
And I'm going to kill myself and then run away from home.
Be my guest. I'm sick of this.
You can feel the talk, persuade, argue, yell, hit, and it doesn't get you anywhere.
Dad's gonna freak when he sees these new wheat checks.
Then triple your fun.
What will happen after a while, believe it or not, is that the child will get used to it. What hits them right between the old eyes when you first start using it is that you are not about to get baited into a stupid, idiotic discussion of a stupid, idiotic Twinkie, and that you are the person who's in control of the house, and you should be. Now, how's it going to go after a while? After the child gets used to it, the scene's going to go like this.
Mom, can I have a Twinkie?
No, dear.
Why not?
Because we're going to eat in 15 minutes.
Oh, come on. I really want one.
That's one.
Oh, all right.
And that's nice. And we don't count the oh, all right, because it's not such a bad thing. And we don't have to do anything. If the kid said, oh, all right, stupid jerk. That's 3, take 5, add 5 for the bad mouth, and when you come back, kiddo, we're going to talk. And it's a whole different story. So I'll be explaining to you the wild animal trainer model as we go along. Some people who get a little bit bothered by this, thinking that it may be a little too heavy-handed, I can reassure you that my overall philosophy is what we call dictatorship to democracy. And what that means is that when your kids are little, about 5, your house ought to be a dictatorship where you are the judge, jury, and executioner if need be. When they're 17 years old, they ought to have more to say about the rules and things that affect them. But when push comes to shove, who's paying the mortgage? You are. Who knows better than they do what's good for them? You do. A lot of parents complicate their discipline tremendously by setting for themselves 2 goals. The first goal is to discipline the child, and the second goal is to get the kid to like it. Okay, so they explain and explain and explain and explain, hoping that the child will say something like, gee, I never thought about it like that before, and then happily comply with the rule. This.
I never thought that way before. Sure, that makes sense. I'll clean my room right now.
I agree with your point of view. I'll never, ever tease my brother again.
Well, those of you who are laughing should be laughing because you know that kids do not respond like that.
My allowance.
Kids, when they're little, have a strong sense of being inferior. The reason they feel they're inferior is because they are inferior. They're shorter, they're smaller, they're less intelligent, less privileged, less of just about everything. Okay? And it really bugs them. They don't like it. They can't do stuff as well as the older kids, as their parents, and things like that. So they like to have some power. They like to make a mark on the world. You've seen children some of the time go down to a lake and they'll take a rock and they'll throw it in the water, and they can do that for hours because they enjoy making the big splash. It's just no good. Counting just doesn't work for us. Almost invariably, what these people have done is something like this.
You ready?
This is stupid. I'm not going anywhere. Why can't I just stay home for 3 idiot hours?
That's 1. I'm getting a little sick of this, young man. Do you want to wind up in your room again? You look at me when I'm talking to you. Okay, that's 2. I don't understand why you can't do this little thing for me when all the time we're doing stuff for you. That's 3. You march right on up to your room right now. Just wait till your father gets home. He's going to hear all about this. I am sick and tired of this kind of behavior. Now, you better straighten up and fly right. Do you understand me?
That's too much talking and too much emotion. That's not the 1, 2, 3. There are a lot of discipline systems on the market, and I think some of them are pretty good. I may be prejudiced. I think this one is the best. But you can ruin any of them by doing too much talking and too much emotion.
You get this low.
That's all he could do. Bedtime came, this kid had to find his pajamas. But worse than that, he had to find his bed.
A real-life murder mystery. Whodunit on Halloween.
Okay, here's how it goes. Let's imagine that you have a 4-year-old. The 4-year-old is having a temper tantrum, throwing himself on the floor because you turned off the TV. You have no idea what to do. He's banging his head, he's yelling, he's screaming, he's kicking all over the place, and you're at a loss. The pediatrician told you to ignore it. Your mother told you to put a cold washcloth on his face. And your husband told you to beat the hell out of him. So,
You'll see all your favorite events, including the Canadian Chuck Wagon Racers.
like this. That's 1. Come on now, I don't want you to make a fool out of me in the candy section of the Jewel. All you're going to do if you do that is you are going to be telling the kid that you can be had for a nickel, and you're going to be crucified in the next minute.
Silly.
Older child, a 10-year-old, you can time him out of the store. You can say, that's 3, out of the store, I'll meet you when I'm done. A 2-year-old, of course, you couldn't do that. You wouldn't want a 2-year-old running around the parking lot. He could get run over by the fruit delivery truck, and you'd be in big trouble.
But the stew was real satisfying.
You through what we call the talk, persuade, argue, yell, hit syndrome. And some of you can easily imagine what that is. If a kid who's not doing what you want him to do, you start talking to him. That doesn't work, you start trying to persuade him. That doesn't work, you start arguing. That doesn't work, you start yelling. And maybe whammo, later, you hit him. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're all going around bopping your kids all the time, but I will suggest seriously that one of the major causes of child abuse, physical, not sexual, is the little adult assumption. It's a parent who has read in a book or heard somewhere that words and reasons should work, and when they don't work, the parent goes crazy.
But when you say what you just said, that's wrong.
On our list. So if anybody would like to start, we can entertain some questions.
Yes, Dr. Phelan. Mine is a two-part question. Will this method cause my child to hate his room? And if so, does this room have to be a sterile environment?
My response is no. We've timed out kids for years and years and years. I used this on my children, and they didn't hate their room when they went up there. What I think may cause a child to hate his room is all the arguing, yelling, screaming, name-calling, belittling, sarcasm, and all that kind of stuff you may do if you don't use a method like this.
What is a loafer?
Exhibit A.
Doing pretty good with coming up with most of the questions. Any more?
What if my child wrecks his room?
What do you do if they trash the room? Child goes to his room, he's really mad, and he wrecks the joint. How are you going to handle that? Well, what I'm going to tell you is not a method that I came up with. It's a method that a couple of parents I saw years and years ago came up with, and I give them the credit for it. They came into my office to see me with an 8-year-old son, and this boy was one of the sweetest kids you'd ever want to meet. Problem was he wasn't so sweet in school, and he wasn't so sweet at home either.
Friday, everybody's upset with everybody.
Don't fight me on this.
And nobody's sure why.
Are you crazy?
A family feud in the Peaceable Kingdom on a special night.
There's very few room wreckers, but just so you're ready for it, it's kind of the ultimate. If you don't do what I just suggested, you're giving the child the ultimate weapon over you. And anytime he gets really, really mad or doesn't like a timeout, he's got this big gun that he can pull out to intimidate you, and we don't want that. Okay, next question.
What if my child won't stay in his room?
What if the child won't stay in the room? You put them up in the bedroom, and they don't stay in there.
Hey, man, I can't drive.
I can drive?
Yeah, right. I'll call my mom.
Are you crazy?
Nah, she really doesn't want me to drink. We have this deal. If I drink, I don't drive. She picks me up. No hassle.
Hello?
Hi, Mom.
You need a ride?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And Richard, I'm glad you called.
Okay, another question.
Dr. Phelan, what if my child won't come out of his room?
You probably know the answer. Relax and enjoy yourself. Actually, by all rights, you should tell them when the timeout is up, and try not to cheat on that one. Set a timer or something downstairs, and then you go up. And if they've been real quiet, you know, one of the basic rules of parenting is if you know the child's in the house and they've been quiet for more than 5 minutes, find them as fast as you can, because you never know what they've been up to.
Separately from Galoob.
What we will do is we will sometimes tell the child, look, if you don't want to be locked in the room, stay in the room. But if you come out once during timeout, then I'm going to lock the door. Okay? Now, the kind of locks that you can get the hook and eye, the bolt lock. For little kids, they have those plastic doorknob covers, you know, go on the inside, and the kid's got to squeeze it real hard. And if he can't squeeze it hard enough and squeeze the doorknob, then he can't get out of the room. And those can work fairly well for tiny kids.
For hours and hours of learning.
I thought this is really silly, and this is just too gamey. And if it does get that gamey, it'll ruin the discipline. So now what we suggest, believe it or not, is that you lock the door if you're having a hard time with the child. Now, some parents say, oh, you know, you make my kid a claustrophobic. I really don't know of any kids I've made claustrophobic by doing this so far. We don't like to lock them in at night, but we will lock them in during the day. Yeah! About this time or shortly after, my wife comes along and she says, let's go to Disney World. And I said, oh, are we flying? She said, no, we're driving. And I said, you got to be out of your mind. And she said, no, I think it would be fun to drive. 20 hours from Chicago to Orlando. I said, well, you know, I'll go, but just make a reservation for me in a mental hospital in Atlanta somewhere, because that's as far as I'm going to get with you guys. I'm not going to make it all the way.
I love that story.
Yeast infections are no joke, so I don't fool around when it comes to a cure.
One of the things we used to do is we do a 1, 2, 3, nobody can talk for 15 minutes. And that worked pretty well with our kids, but it assumes semi-cooperative kids that are willing to shut up. But it would work pretty good.
It's all connected.
Sometimes it works. We used to use this with our kids when the purpose of the trip was to go out for a treat. We'd be going to Baskin-Robbins for ice cream. And the first couple times I took them out in the car, kids were in the back seat, and they start cranking up for a fight. I'd say, hey guys, that's 1, third time blows the trip. They hit 3, turned the car around, took it back home, parked it in the driveway, nobody gets their ice cream. Now, occasionally I'd sneak out for a quick hot fudge myself later, but none of them got their ice cream. And second time, same thing, turned the car around, went back home.
Yes, how do I deal with them when I'm out in public?
Is that the children have something they can hold over your head in public that they can't hold over your head in private, and that is the threat of public embarrassment. No one wants to look like a child abuser in the candy section of the Jewel. Get reported to DCFS and all this type of stuff. And these little kids pick it up at a very early age. So they'll kind of hold it over your head. So what are you going to do? Well, my first suggestion is going to sound a little crazy to you, maybe, but the first suggestion is don't take them unless you absolutely have to.
That's so unfair.
One of the things we used to do is we do a 1, 2, 3, nobody can talk for 15 minutes. And that worked pretty well with our kids, but it assumes semi-cooperative kids that are willing to shut up.
Here he comes, fat.
They will just sit there and not bother anybody, and they'll just kind of stay out of it. And that's okay, too. You can put up with that. Then we have the antagonistic grandparents. The antagonistic grandparents come in 2 different forms. One is the kind of grandparent who will say to you, you have to go to a workshop to raise your kids? You know, what is this, you know? When I was a boy or I was a girl, all Daddy had to do was get his belt off like this, and boom, just like that, we would shape up. You know, what is all this modern psychological stuff? You don't have to go to workshops to learn how to raise your kids. Then there's another type of antagonistic grandparent, and what they will do is, let's say you're counting your son, and little Bobby's there, and you say to Bobby, Bobby, that's 3, take 5. And Grandma's sitting over there, and Grandma says, oh, little Bobby didn't really do anything. Bobby, come and sit on Grandma's lap for a while. And a lot of parents ask at this point, can you count the grandparents?
Can you identify the #1 threat to kids? It's always nearby. At the house, in the car, on the way to school. This is the leading killer of kids. Accidents. Every year, 1 in 4 kids is hurt badly enough to need medical attention. The Surgeon General says most injuries can be prevented. Call the National Safe Kids campaign for a free booklet on injury prevention and emergency response. Safe kids are no accident! 1-800-365-KIDS.
They don't even have to lay in the bed. They can wander around the room. They don't even have to shut the door. They can do all kinds of different things when they're up there. It's only 3 things we don't let the kids do.
Roller skating, footbag, BMX racing.
California.
Or let me give you another example. Say you have a 7-year-old kid, and you have to pardon my language for a second. This child on the playground for the first time heard the word bitch. Now, he doesn't know what it means exactly. He knows that it's kind of a derogatory term. But you go and you turn off the TV, and the kid looks up at you and says, you bitch. And you're there like, that's 1. You bitch, that's 2. He says, you rotten bitch, that's 3, take 5. Now, I admit, you can't use the 1, 2, 3 on that. The kid steals the bike, you say that's 1, he goes on and gets 2 more before he gets timed out. That doesn't make any sense at all.
The intrigue never ends.
A lot of the anxiety that I had about parenting.
At the beginning, because they don't know where it's coming from, that's 1, that's 2 means nothing to them. But once you get to 3 a couple of times, and they know what's coming next, then it begins to sink in.
This was a miracle for me, just the anger. I no longer had to have anger. I no longer had to get mad. I could be the adult and they were the children.
Still a little skeptical? Don't worry. Over the years, you've had a lot of company.
Why? Why did they do it? You don't kick a dog.
Without a doubt, it's the best discipline program we've ever used.
It's so simple to implement, piece by piece. You got to give it a shot.
Oh, all right, stupid jerk.
The Canadian Chuck Wagon Racers.
There's Jay on vacation.